that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. Tom Fennell, George Harvey. Every day I go to the internet, find out what I can about what's happened in energy and climate change in the previous 24 hours. I put up links to the best, most interesting articles that I find and put them up on my website, which is geoharvey.wordpress.com. And Tom and I report every week on the 20 or so that are the best of these, the most interesting of these. So we will start on...
Before we do, how would somebody want to follow up?
That's a good point. You go to geoharvey.wordpress.com, Geoharvey, and you just look, there's blog entries there, and you can look at the date. I read the dates.
You click on the...
Click on the link
which
that
is
goes
in blue.
Which is in,
Yep.
yeah, at the end of the little synopsis I've got for each article, and the synopsis is what I'm reading as I go through this. So we'll start on Thursday, October 1st. This item came from CNews Renewables. Renewable power plants produce 31.3% of Spain's power output in September.
That's total electric power.
That's total electric power, led by wind farms with 15.2% of total output. Wind farms generated 3,023 gigawatt hours, up 41.8% on the year. Hydro, PV, and concentrated solar power plants registered shares of 8, 3.5, and 2.5% of total generation, respectively. Demand was down by 3.7%. Which I find interesting because it means a decline in demand is bigger than solar PVs. Mm-hmm. But, you know, that's a significant figure, 3.7%.
I wonder why demand is down.
Well, demand's down all over the world.
I mean, is it because of conservation, or are things happening to the economy?
Well, certainly the Spanish economy has been suffering. But you've got a picture up there. What's the picture?
It's just a wind farm that I think is in Spain.
Okay.
Kind of a pretty picture, though.
Yeah, if it isn't in Spain, it's in some place like Spain.
This one came with the article, so I think
it could be. But CNews Renewables takes pictures from Iceland to illustrate articles from Ethiopia if they think that's what they want to do. Their pictures all come from Wikimedia Commons.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And which is, if anybody has a need for a picture.
A lot of good pictures.
Yeah. And you can, it's, the Wikimedia Commons, by the way, is commons.wikimedia.org, I think. But certainly it has millions and millions of pictures. Okay, our next item comes from Green Tech Media. Swiss engineering firm ABB has raised the upper limit for microgrid renewable energy penetration without storage. Research by the company suggests that up to 50% intermittent generation could be admitted to microgrids without needing storage at all, provided that automation systems are in place to keep the grid stable.
That's interesting.
It is, and
I guess a lot of it has to do with the fact that solar energy is coming online when they need it.
Yeah, that's right. Solar power. You know, people say, well, solar is intermittent. I got news for you, so is the demand.
Good point.
And they match each other pretty well. And so this is an interesting piece of research. Again, if anybody wants to look at it, it's Green Tech Media. Okay, our next item also comes from Green Tech Media. Energy storage just got a big vote of confidence from one of the world's largest utilities. The CEO of NextEra Energy says he expects the company to deploy $100 million in energy storage projects in the next 12 months. He expects there will be no gas-fired peaking plants built after 2020 because of competition from batteries.
Well, that makes a lot of
You
sense,
see
really.
an X crossing a gas-powered plant there, I guess.
Well, I don't think, that was a coal burning plant at one time.
One
just
time
by
or
the
another,
look
yeah,
of the
from the
chimneys.
look of things.
But they could have converted it to gas.
They could have, yeah. Coal used to have shorter chimneys, but the EPA made them build the chimneys taller.
Yeah.
The idea was they wanted to handle the pollution caused by coal by diluting
Sending
it.
it to somebody else.
Yeah, and it dilutes better when it's higher up.
There was a flap happened when I was in Rhode Island. As people downtown were getting the paint on their cars deteriorating.
Right.
And when they tracked it down, it had a signature that was associated with coal plants in Ohio.
Oh, really? They can do some very interesting things with chemistry these days.
There's a quick takeaway here. It's talking about this company, Next Era, which is a pretty good company, good-sized company. When a player like Next Era Energy starts to tout energy storage, the utility industry and the renewables industry take notice. Battery storage is the holy grail of the renewables business. If we can deliver firm power to renewable customers at a cost-effective rate, you'll see renewables exploding even faster than they already are.
This is happening even as we speak.
Absolutely. That's kind of why I read it.
Pardon me, please. Okay, we're up to Friday, October 2nd. Oil giant BP PLC's second quarter profit reportedly missed analyst estimates. The investor presentation accompanying the earnings call following the results announcement highlighted the difficulties faced by BP PLC, British Petroleum, as cash flow dries up. The company's earnings did not cover costs. Other oil companies are also suffering. This is from Bloomberg.
The company's earnings did not cover costs.
That means they're losing money.
Bingo. Bingo.
You can see it from the graph.
You can see it from the picture.
Yeah, I think everybody should know what's happening to the fossil fuel industry. A note. Now, most people have heard of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Dow Jones has got lots and lots and lots of indices, and there is a Dow Jones U.S. Oil and Gas Total Stock Market Index. And that index at the time that this article appeared was down 35% over the previous year. That's a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
But it isn't even close to what happened to the coal index. The Dow Jones U.S. Coal Index was at 723.51 on June 27th, 2008. I will read the figure again, 723.51. On Friday, it was 24.34. That is a decline of 96.
723 to 24.
That's right. So if you had $723 invested in that, you'd have enough to buy dinner for two at a cheap restaurant. On Friday, and that drop is 96.6%. And the stuff that has happened, Alpha Natural Resources, which is a big company, their stock 7-8 years ago was at a price of about 94. The day this article appeared, it had dropped to 3.9 cents.
Wow.
And that was, they went bankrupt.
Coal's a dead man walking. I mean, there's just too many things happening to coal at the same time.
Everything is going wrong with coal.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Tom and I have been saying for literally at this point, I think it's fair to say for years.
Yeah.
We've been here for just about 2 years. We have been saying, you know, we're not stock advisors, but our advice, given that, is don't invest in coal. Don't invest in fossil fuels. Okay, our next item comes from Penn Energy. India has submitted its 2030 climate action plan to the United Nations in advance of December's Paris climate talks. The plan includes a pledge to expand its renewable power capacity to 40% of its energy mix and cut greenhouse gas emissions 35% by 2030. It aims to install 175 gigawatts of solar, wind, and biomass power by 2022. You know, this scheme that they reported to the United Nations is deceptive.
How?
Well, when they say we're going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 35%, they don't mean an absolute reduction.
They're playing games with words.
They sure are. This is a per capita reduction.
Okay.
So they're saying our population growth is out of control, but we're going to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases by 35% by 2030. You know, if they just keep their greenhouse gas emissions level in absolute terms and do nothing,
they're going to go down.
They're going to go down on a per capita basis. So,
well, one thing they are doing, and we've discussed it here on the show several times,
yes,
they're bringing power to the people.
Oh boy, are they. And there's no question about that. And 175 gigawatts of solar, wind, and biomass power is nothing to be ashamed of. That's a lot.
Well, we've seen some very large solar installations in India.
We have indeed. And they have...
And they're all out in the country where the people need it. You know?
They have this concept of a solar park, which is a place where solar farms can be developed. And some of these things are just mind-bogglingly big. But you know, we'll just have to see what happens with India, and the only way we're going to find out is by watching it unfold. Okay, the Globe. Back to coal. The Globe and Mail says half of the world's coal isn't worth digging out of the ground at current prices, according to Moody's Investors Service. The global metallurgical coal benchmark has fallen to the lowest level in a decade, hitting $89 a metric ton. And we have a quote from an analyst who says further production cuts are necessary to bring the market back into balance. And I want to point out this is metallurgical coal, which is a coal... They use it to make steel. They use it to make steel. It's a coal of a very specific high quality. So, you know...
So they're after the carbon more than they're after the heat.
That may be. Yeah. That actually may be, yeah. But it is one of the highest priced
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
Types of coal.
It's probably one of the least polluting types of coal.
I think it actually is, yeah. Okay.
Moving right along.
CNews Renewables tells us that this is on Saturday, October 3rd, renewable energy plants in Scotland have helped displace 12.3 million tons, and that is metric tons, of carbon dioxide emissions in 2014, of which is 119% more than in 2010. Scotland's wind, solar, and hydropower plants saved more CO2 from entering the atmosphere than what is released by every single car, bus, and train journey in the country. And it's interesting to me to see the word solar in that thing for Scotland.
Yeah, it is really. It is.
This is like solar power in Alaska. You know, it's just like, oh my gosh.
That's a nice picture of Scotland. That is Scotland in this
yeah.
particular case. Yeah,
that is not the particular wind farm that Donald Trump is complaining about, but, you know. Oh.
I forgot about that one, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's back in court.
Oh, is he really?
He's taking it to the UK's Supreme Court.
Good for him.
Yeah, I hope he goes broke on it. Boy, I'm sorry. I'm being unkind. I shouldn't say things like that. But I think it would probably be better for the world if he went. Okay. All right, from Clean Technica, bailing out of that issue, we find this, still on Saturday, based on new research. The North American Insulation Manufacturers Association estimates that roughly 90% of existing U.S. single-family homes are under-insulated.
That's a very interesting number.
Oh, yeah. This wastes energy, costs more, and decreases comfort. The study focuses on how increased insulation across the U.S. housing sector can decrease energy use. And I want to point something out about this to anybody who's interested. Insulation is not the most important thing to address when you're trying to make your house more efficient. The most important thing for making your house more efficient is making sure that air leaks are sealed.
I was thinking about that. I'm trying to come up with the words.
Yep.
Sealing the house.
Sealing the house up. Now you have to be careful about that because you've got to make sure that you've got enough fresh air getting in But there are ways that you can preheat the fresh air. You can run it through a heat exchanger that will heat it up using the air that's
So it's fresh air, but it's warm.
It's fresh air, but it's warmed up, and the insulation. But there's one thing that I really want to tell everybody. I just want to tell everybody this. If you're planning on building a house, insist that that house be efficient in its energy use right from the design, because the cost of a house that uses 10% of the fuel of conventional housing construction is the same as conventional construction. So if you're
It should be a no-brainer.
it should be a no-brainer, and the house is more comfortable too. You know, this is you can. I was talking to a guy who was an architect, and he said that a client came to him, and the client said, he said to the client, "You've got two ways you can go with this house. You can either go with conventional construction, or you can go the green route." And the guy said, "Oh, I don't want to go the green route. I mean, you know, I don't want to be fancy or you know, some kind of hippie. I just want a house." And the architect said, "Well, that's okay, but before we do that, I want you to understand it's going to cost you $3,700 extra to go conventional."
What?
The cost of going to a house that used only 10% of the fuel, which you achieved by adding insulation and air sealing, was lower because you didn't need a chimney and a furnace.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the guys doing contracting are learning how to do this. Insist, absolutely insist. You want a house that's going to be efficient from the get-go. Why should you pay $3,000 a year to heat a house when you can pay $300 instead?
The technology is here, but there's still inertia out there.
That's right. And in fact, if you want to pay a little bit extra, just a little bit extra, and then it will be a little bit that will be made up within a few years, you can go to a house that doesn't need any fuel at all. And that means, you know, here in Vermont, you can go to a house that is heated by yourself, your members of your family, your Labrador Retriever, and really much more than that.
There's other dogs that are a little more efficient than Labradors. I've mentioned this on a show. A friend of mine lives in a hay bale house.
Yeah.
And she'll boil water for tea in the morning and warms up the house.
House gets warm. Yeah, cooking is a big deal. But you know, one of the architects that I talked to said, yeah, human body heat, cooking. He said you got to make sure that there's enough, you know, that there's a little bit of extra heat just for the odd days.
So that's where the German Shepherds come in.
His solution for the apartment building that he had was to put in electric resistance heat floor heaters in the bathrooms. That was sufficient to heat the building.
Isn't that amazing? And the bathrooms are nice and cozy.
The bathrooms are nice and cozy, that's right. And of course, since they're designed to go into the bathroom, you can step out of the shower onto a nice toasty floor.
Yeah.
How do you like that? And what does it cost you? Less. Okay. Still moving right along, but still on Saturday, Time sent us this little item. SolarCity unveiled a new solar panel product that the company says will be the world's most efficient. The new panel will be manufactured in the United States, right here in River City? No, but right here in this country.
Yeah, they're going to make them in Buffalo.
Buffalo. They will shuffle off to Buffalo. And will produce 30% to 40% more power than standard panels while costing less than the average panel now when manufactured at scale, according to the company. And that is important because it means that you can get more electricity out of the same space. Or, if you wish, you can use less space to produce the same amount of electricity. And either way, you're saving money.
This change is incremental, but there's more on the way. I mean, there's a lot of guys.
There's a lot on the way.
Moving a little bit this way and a little bit more this way.
Yep.
20 years from now, we won't recognize what's available now.
Yeah, and you know what it reminds me of was the story that I heard once of a guy who changed the carburetor in his car. This goes back to the 1960s. He changed the carburetor in order to get 40% more fuel economy. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
He changed to solid rubber tires.
Solid rubber.
Solid rubber tires. He went to I don't know. He just went through a whole bunch of different efficiency things, and each one of them adds up. It's like he gets 20% here and 40% there and 20% there and 25% there.
Yeah.
Finally, he's got to a point where he goes into a gas station, fills the gas tank, drives down the road a little ways. Somebody flashes him because as he's driving down the road, his gas tank is overflowing. It doesn't work that way, sorry. But truth is, solar power is going to be just getting more efficient, and that really what it means is if you want to put up some panels, it's going to cost less because you won't need as much racking. You won't use as much materials putting them up. You won't use as much labor.
So even the panels would be fewer, and all hardware associated with the panels is going to be less.
That's right.
Yep.
And the work putting it in is going to be less. And hopefully they'll start reducing other costs, the soft costs for permitting and things like that. Okay, we're up to Sundays, October 4th, and we got this idea from Clean Technica, this article. And it is an opinion piece called G20 Energy Ministers Heart Renewables Squash Energy Poverty Case for Fossil Fuels.
They talk about energy poverty here. I hadn't heard that.
Well, this is something
it's
been coming out of the fossil fuel industry. The high-level energy ministers from G20 countries met for the first time ever, and if fossil fuel stakeholders were hoping for a show of support from that historic event, they got bupkis. Fossil fuel sector's talk of energy poverty fell on deaf ears.
You got to pronounce that right. It's bupkis.
Bupkis. Okay,
It's Yiddish for nothing.
Yes. All right. I look at that. It doesn't even look like Yiddish to me for some reason.
It is.
Nevertheless, and Yiddish, by the way, is a great language which needs to be preserved.
Yeah, very expressive.
How in the world how could we lose a language where the person who is in the next apartment above you is called your upstairsiker?
I never heard that one.
I had a friend who told me an insult in Yiddish, which is "Sollst wechseln wie Zwiebel mit dem Kopf in der Erde."
Okay.
It means you should grow like an onion with your head in the ground. Oh dear. This is culture. This is culture. It's got to be preserved. It's
always been an extremely expressive language.
It has been, yes, indeed. Okay. What they're saying here is that people who live in the third world, poor people who have never had energy before, are going to be rendered more poverty-stricken by renewable power. And what's turning out is that these guys are not being fooled by that. The energy poverty is the idea of, they're never going to get anything if we try to give them renewables. And in fact, it is very clear that exactly the opposite is what's happening.
We've talked about some grassroots stuff.
Oh yeah,
women walking around selling
I
solar
love
panels.
This. Maasai women carrying around solar panels for installation on the roofs of grass-built buildings, and they're carrying their panels on donkeys.
Yeah, amazing. And it's just enough energy to give them a television set and a light.
Yeah, a television set, my gosh. Or a computer.
Or a computer, yep.
Yeah. Okay. We are up to Monday, October 5th, and the idea of using a computer like one of these things. This computer, for anybody who wants to know, uses 5 watts. 5 watts.
A flashlight uses more than that.
Yeah, I do too, and it's extremely bright. But this thing uses 5 watts. 32 gigabyte hard drive.
Yeah.
And it uses 5 gigabytes of RAM, and it uses 5 watts. It will run for 11 hours on a battery. Its battery, internal battery.
We're making progress.
Yeah, we are.
And we're back in Africa again.
We're back in Africa on Monday, October 5th. And this is another opinion piece called Africa's Light Bulb Moment, and it's lead role in global renewable energy transformation. And this, by the way, tells you exactly why the fossil fuel industry was wrong and why the G20 energy ministers didn't pay any attention to them. Africa's lack of access to clean, affordable energy is a scandal. The poorest households in Africa are spending the equivalent of US $10 per kilowatt hour on lighting. $10 per kilowatt hour.
Just in case anybody forgets, we're paying about 15 cents.
Yeah.
And we're one of the more expensive states.
Yeah, that's true in the United States. Although there are a lot of places in the world where people plug in and they spend 40 cents or 60 cents or $1. But $10.
15 cents is a good price.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe the national average is 14.
Yeah, and this says, but Africa's energy deficit is not only a scandal, it's also an opportunity. And
That's true.
We see the open fire here.
Typical household in Africa or India, China.
Unvented.
Yep.
And those fires.
And they're getting sick.
People are getting sick from this, and the combustion products are not vented properly, and the result of that is that about 10,000 people die every day, according to the World Health Organization. And if you replace their wood, their zebra dung, whatever it is that they're burning for with coal, it's not going to help.
Not at all, no.
And if you give them electricity that comes from coal, it's going to have to come in on transmission lines, and that's expensive.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
Doesn't have to be that way. You can get your solar panels to the little village
via donkey.
Via donkey by having a bunch of Maasai women make money doing it. You know, it's
a quick takeaway from here. Talk about Africa has an opportunity to lead the world and to leap to a totally renewable energy base.
Yes.
In the same way as the continent has leapfrogged from fixed line telephony straight to mobile communications.
Right.
And that has happened.
And it's very analogous.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it is, again, done in a way that's free of transmission lines. And people really don't, you see transmission lines all over
they made sense
country.
at one time.
And people don't realize how much they cost.
Yeah. And how vulnerable they are.
Oh, yeah. I was reading about one in Oregon. They were putting up a transmission line that was just a little over 20 miles long, and it was going to cost, as I recall, it was $10 million a mile, but I might be wrong. Sorry for all the coughs. I tell Roland that we need to edit those out, but I think it'd be too much editing. All right. That was from allafrica.com. Now we've got one from Renew Economy. An expert report submitted to the Victorian government, this is the state of Victoria,
Australia,
notes that in that state, as in many others in Australia, the current levy on PV exports to the grid pays rooftop solar owners only 6 cents per kilowatt hour. The grid owners then resell that to other people at 20 to 30 cents per kilowatt hour.
That's a good deal.
Sure is, leaving 15 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour to be shared as a, quote, windfall profit by the retailer and the network operator. And this is a really good reason for people to take that 6 cents and invest it in a battery.
Yeah.
Or for a community to go off grid and just say, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in dealing with you guys.
So what they're shooting for here is they want to be able to ensure there's enough renewable energy and associated technologies like energy storage to keep wholesale electricity prices low,
right?
At least no higher than they are now, so that renewables cannot be blamed for increases caused by closures of power stations or other changes to the electricity market.
Yeah.
And it is changing.
This, in Vermont, if you were in the same position as these people, you'd be putting money on, and not just Vermont, but many states in the United States, you'd be feeding your excess power to the grid, and you'd get paid for it a price that would be in excess of the normal retail price.
Well, here they're paying a fair price here.
Right, and that
But down in Victoria, they're not. They're taking advantage of people.
right, and I should point out that although the price is in excess of the retail price, which makes it sound like you're producing a burden on the next person over.
It sounds that way, but
Sounds
it's
that
not
way, but that's not what's happening, because the price is coming on at the same time that the grid operators would be paying high prices for
peak power, which are some cases very high.
Very high, in excess of $10 per kilowatt hour in some cases.
That's pretty high
in the United States.
Yeah.
I found a couple of examples of that, but they were in Australia. But nevertheless, I know that Green Mountain Power has paid 60 cents per kilowatt hour on occasion, and Green Mountain Power is not struck by those peak demand charges the way.
Well, not like Arizona,
not
where
like,
there's a lot of air conditioning.
Yeah,
and stuff.
Air conditioning is a big deal.
We might see more in a really cold winter day.
Yes, well, that's when they were paying a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, what happens is the power companies have to average all this stuff out, and then they go to a public service board or something like that and say, we want to charge XYZ to the customers.
Because this is what we've been spending.
Because this is the average, you know,
Yeah.
here's the average of what we're spending, and here's and another thing that people don't realize is how averages are arrived at. You know, if you think about this, let's just say that you average the price of power over 100 days.
Okay.
And during that 100 days, 99% of the power is 10 cents per kilowatt hour.
Oh yeah.
And 1% of the power is $100 per kilowatt hour. What does it do? Well, it just completely blows the average, because it means that the price of power is not going to be a little bit more than the 10 cents per kilowatt hour. It's going to be a lot more than.
It's going to be like 50 cents.
Yeah, it's going to be big. So
they're playing games, definitely.
Yeah, you can play games with numbers. There's an old
sure.
saying, figures lie and liars figure.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Figures don't lie and liars figure.
I think figures lie. When the liars do their figuring, the figures can lie, and you can be fooled by figures that are perfectly legitimate figures. But nevertheless,
What was that famous quote about fooling people?
what's that?
I don't remember. George Bush
he
wrecked the.
He wrecked it. The one that came from Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah,
You can fool some of the
people some of the time.
and you can fool all of the people some of the time, and you can fool some of the people all of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time.
That's the way Lincoln said it.
That's the way Lincoln said it, and George W. Bush probably
He said it differently.
said it, yeah, very differently, I'm sure. Okay. You know, he did something that I think is reprehensible.
Yeah.
When the zoning maps for planting seeds came out in 2005, the White House directed that they be withdrawn.
No kidding.
And the reason was because approximately half, you know, there's the coarse zoning.
This is for planting. Yeah.
For planting.
The climate.
The zones,
Climate
if
zone.
you have the coarse zone, there's two ways to do it. One is zone 5A, 5B, 6A, 6B, and so forth. But if you do it just by the integer numbers, they differ by 10 degrees in the lowest temperature in the winter. And the lowest temperature in the winter is where climate change becomes the most obvious. And what had happened was about 50% of the United States got shifted from one climate zone to the next one warmer. And when
That happened in Vermont.
Oh yeah. And when you look at the zoning map, the planting zone maps for 1990, and compare them with the ones that were produced in 2005 after the withdrawal, they were not like this, but before they were withdrawn, they were. You see that there's an obvious difference, and there were universities and so forth that drew maps that show the areas that had changed, and they would do those in red and the other areas in white. in the areas that changed, you could see there's bands across the country. Half the country had changed planting zones because of climate change, but it was inconvenient for the White House to admit that climate change was happening, so it told the Agriculture Department not to issue those maps, but to continue issuing the old one.
And that was more than 10 years ago.
It was, and when Obama got into the White House, one of the first things that happened with the Agriculture Department was that they issued new zoning maps. Mm-hmm. But it was just part of this whole thing of, no, climate change isn't happening. We don't care what happens, in the future, but we know that it hasn't happened so far. And it's a big fat lie. And
it's a religious lie now.
Well,
I don't mean that in a traditional religious sense. It's become a religion.
Yeah, just think about this. How many Republican presidential hopefuls are there? People who are running for their nomination.
I don't have enough fingers.
Yeah.
I can't count.
How many of them are climate change deniers?
All of them.
Not Lindsey Graham.
No, huh?
No, but
okay, good for him.
Basically, you got more of these guys than you got fingers, and who are denying climate change. Okay, MSNBC did a survey of 70,000 climate scientists to find out how many of them denied climate change. How many did they find?
4.
4.
That was well rehearsed.
We didn't rehearse that, but we both knew it. Which means that if you threw a party for all of the congressional presidential hopefuls who deny climate change, and all of the 70,000 scientists who deny climate change, the people running for president would outnumber a number of the others by about 2 or 3 to 1. What is this? It's basically a fraud which is being perpetrated by fossil fuels industries, and we should be prosecuting them under the RICO laws for racketeering.
They're facing disaster, really.
They're putting us into disaster, is what they're doing.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
Give me a break! My gosh, we are being outspent by China 2 to 1. So what does that mean? It means that China is going to arrive at a point where they have energy security and they're not dependent on fuel faster than we are. Mm-hmm. And this is by a party that says that it's patriotic. Is there something wrong with this picture? And they say that they're democratic. Is there something wrong with this picture? Oh dear. Okay.
I forgot where we are.
I've ranted a bit. Okay.
Medium-term renewable energy market. Did we do that one?
I don't even know.
We're talking about SolarCity.
Let me just take a look here. Here we go. The International Energy Agency is revising its new renewable energy forecasts. In its recent medium-term outlook assessment, it now expects renewable energy will account for 2/3 of net additions to global power capacity over 2015 to 2020. It expects installation of 700 gigawatts of renewable capacity in the next 5 years.
That's a lot.
And
quite a lot.
If that turns out to be correct, and 2/3 of the additions are renewable, mm-hmm. What happens in the next 5 years? And my guess is that what it means is that in the next 5 years there will be virtually no fossil fuels plants being built at all.
I wouldn't bet against that.
Well, I don't see coal being built.
No, coal's not going to be built at all.
This guy we
might
just
see some gas.
The guy we just cited from what was it? I've forgotten which utility, but it was that guy said that he expected that there would be no peaking plants, gas mm-hmm. peaking plants mm-hmm. being built. So the only ones being built, and this is starting 5 years from now, mm-hmm. with 5 years experience between now and then with the changes in natural gas prices, I think that it's very possible that there will be no fossil fuel plants to speak of.
It is possible. It is possible.
Yeah, again, people, think before you put money in the stock market and fossil fuel companies and so forth. Divest, maybe that's a good way to put it. Okay, so we are at the renewables, CNews Renewables item. This month, SolarCity will start provide. Oh, wait a minute. Did I do that already?
This is SolarCity.
Okay.
Yep, that's the right one.
Will start producing a solar panel with 22% efficiency. The company plans to produce the majority of these in Buffalo. Now, we've already read this. Somehow this made it in twice.
We
referred
did
to
mention
it.
a related item.
Oh, okay. The majority of the new PV panels at its 1 gigawatt plus manufacturing facility in Buffalo, New York, which is expected to open in 2016. Until that plant opens, the PVs will be produced by a pilot facility. And
well, that's going to be another gigafactory in California.
it's another gigafactory, but this was
Interesting picture here. You want to look at it real close.
Yeah.
This is apparently somebody's boardroom,
yes.
but the table there is made out of solar panels.
That's what it looks like.
It's probably SolarCity's boardroom.
I wouldn't be surprised. And yeah, I wonder if you turn all the lights on in the room, how much power those things produce. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, October 6th. South Africa plans to build a solar park in the Northern Cape province to produce an additional 1,500 megawatts. Africa's most advanced economy is investing heavily in renewable energy to counter chronic electricity deficits, which have made utility Eskom resort frequently to controlled power cuts to prevent the grid from collapsing.
So they won't have to do that anymore.
Well, you know, people.
That's brownouts.
Well, in Africa, it's not brownouts; it's blackouts.
Blackouts, yep.
It means that you're sitting there, you know, manufacturing your whatever it is you're manufacturing, and all of a sudden
everything goes off.
Everything goes off. So if you've got pots that are heated by electricity and machines that are powered by electricity and safety equipment that needs electricity, you've got to get your electricity from other sources.
An interesting takeaway here. South Africa has so much solar radiation, and it's so intense. They're in the top 3 in the world.
Wow. South Africa.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that it's that far south.
Yeah. That's what it says. 2,500 hours of sunshine per year, and an average direct solar radiation levels between 4.5 and 6.5 kilowatt hours per day.
Wow.
So they're getting a lot.
They're getting a lot.
It says here they can produce a quarter of its energy needs through green power within the next 15 years.
Well, you know, I have to say that I think they could probably do much better than that.
They probably could if they put their mind to it.
They are
I don't know about this
investigating.
picture here,
Yeah?
whether it's from South Africa or not, but it's an interesting juxtaposition of wind and solar.
Yes.
And it's not a composite picture. This is real. It's
Yes.
a real site somewhere.
We've seen this kind of picture show up every once in a while.
Well, in a way, it makes sense because the connection to the grid.
Well, the connection to the grid is important.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
It's very important. In fact, we could go back to that story that was it Duke Energy bought a coal burning? No, it was not. It was Google. They bought the site of a coal burning plant so that they could turn it into a data center, because a data center needs a lot of power, and it already had the grid connection to carry a lot of power.
Right.
And again, you know, this is not this. You know, we hear about twigs and strings or sticks and strings. This is not sticks and strings. You know, this is heavy duty stuff. If I had to carry a piece of that power line about this long, I'd be overloaded. So, on the other hand, it would have enough copper that I'd be able to sell it and get my lunch. Make it a good lunch. Okay.
Coming right up.
Okay, and that item, by the way, on South Africa came from Citizen TV. This next one is from Motherboard. Last Friday, the rather conservative International Energy Agency quietly released its medium-term renewable energy market report for 2015. The report concluded that by 2020, 26% of the world's energy will be generated by renewable resources. The agency called it, quote, a remarkable shift in a very limited period of time, end quote.
I think it's going to continue at that rate.
I think they are wrong.
You think? Yeah, it's going to happen quicker than that.
It's going to be quicker than that. You know, these people, the USDOE has the Energy Information Administration, and when they make projections about renewable energy, they are wrong 100% of the time. You can check their record. They're wrong. They're just so far off that they say, you know, 25 years from now, in 2040, solar penetration will be X percent, and whatever it is, it's going to be reached next year. Even though they say it's 25 years off, it'll be reached next year, and it's just happened year after year after year.
Interesting picture up here I'd like to mention. We've talked about the Yvonne Pla solar thermal installation before. We've seen some pictures of it from the air.
Right.
This is a picture of it from the ground, a panoramic picture of it.
Right.
Somebody standing there with one of those fancy cameras that swing.
Turns, yeah.
And you can see the column in the middle with the white spot on it.
Yep, glowing.
That's just glowing. That thing must be 1,000,000 degrees up there.
Yeah, it's pretty hot.
It's hot.
I would, you know, you're gonna get really close to that. Not really close to that. If you get much closer than this to it, you're gonna feel that. I used to operate chemical kilns, and they would glow white.
Would they, huh?
Yeah. And I know what it's like. You know, you open a kiln, you can feel the heat from it from across the room. And that looks to me like it's, as they say, hotter than the hinges of Hades.
And just in case anybody doesn't know what's going on, they're not solar panels, they're mirrors.
They're mirrors.
And they're reflecting the sun on that column.
And the
that
inside
thing is glowing.
Yeah, inside that column is molten salt.
Yep.
You have to melt the salt in order to get the thing going. And that means that it takes a fair amount of electricity to start the plant up.
Yep. But they keep it going every day.
They have an ability to use that molten salt to produce power well into the night. And in some of the facilities, they can actually run the facility producing power 24 hours a day, even though it's from the sunshine.
There's enough storage capacity.
There's enough storage,
for
yeah,
them. Yep.
absolutely. So, and they worry about, you know, people worry about birds flying into the concentrating rays of the sun. Occasionally birds are killed, but we've also talked about that. Apparently, the large number of birds that are killed happened when they were testing the plant, and they were concentrating all that light on a spot above the tower.
Yeah, something like that happened. I do remember that.
Nobody was able to feel the heat from any distance, and the birds would fly into it. But with that tower, when it's on the tower, they stay away.
They can detect that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Valid
point.
point.
Okay, we are up to oilprice.com tells us to control climate change, some of the most influential companies have become part of a green alliance called RE100. RE100 has 36 member companies, all of whom are moving toward 100% renewable energy in their operations. They include Goldman Sachs, Starbucks, Nike, P&G, and Walmart, which have joined the campaign. And it's nice to think that if you go to Starbucks, you're going to be buying coffee that was heated by renewable power. Probably the sun.
These guys know what they're doing now. They're getting some publicity out of this.
Yes, they are.
But that isn't why they're doing it.
That's right. They're doing it because solar power is cheap. Because wind power is cheap. And they're also doing it because Ceres, and we've talked about Ceres, has been going around saying to companies, we can show you how to make more money. And the way you make more money is by operating sustainably. And by golly, you know, when you operate sustainably, that means that you're operating in a way that does not terminate. Because to operate unsustainable, to be unsustainable means you're going to terminate.
A couple of interesting graphs here that show greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay.
And the one on the left talks about electricity, where it was steadily growing until about 2008.
Right.
And now with a little peak in the middle, it's going down more steadily, more quickly than it went up.
2008 was when the coal companies started to run into trouble.
Was it?
Yeah.
Coincidence.
Coincidence. What about that?
You know, on the right you see the total greenhouse emissions by economic sector.
Yes.
Electricity is leading. Electricity
But it's
is
also
the first. Transportation is second.
Yep.
So there's room. There's a lot of room
Right.
for growth there.
And there is a lot of work being done on getting renewables to run our electric power generation and our heating. And,
Yeah.
and you know that we've talked about the fact that heat pumps are cheaper to run. It's cheaper to run heat pumps than it is to heat your house with cordwood.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, cordwood has, around here, has always been regarded as the cheapest way to heat a house.
The cheapest way to go.
Okay,
What technology is moving along?
it is. And we're moving along to Wednesday, October 7th. And from Skeptical Science, we got this. It's another piece. I marked as an opinion piece. The title of it is "The Republican Party Stands Alone in Climate Denial." And this, what this says is that Sondre Botstrand, and I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but it's Norwegian, and I don't think even the Norwegians know how to pronounce Norwegian. That's an inside. It's kind of,
Keeler could do it.
yeah, well, he could in his Minnesota manner, but there's two different kinds of Norwegian, and they're pronounced differently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's well, at the University of Bergen, he compared climate positions of conservative political parties from the USA, UK, Norway, Sweden, Spain, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and Germany, and he found the US Republican Party is the only one which is in climate change denial. Why does that surprise us?
The immensely profitable and politically influential fossil fuel industry.
Yeah, which has been buying its political candidates in the United States for a little while, and expects to buy both the Congress and the White House in the next campaign, and which is why the moderate Republicans seem to be in so much trouble, because they are being replaced in the nominations by people who are not moderate, and so we have moderate
we just saw
Republicans.
something like that happen yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. the man who was going to run for Speaker of the House said, "I'm not going to do this."
Yeah.
And I can't blame him for crying out loud, but it was because conservative Republicans, they want to take control, and if they take control, I've already predicted that the Republican Party would split. I don't know for a fact that it will, and it won't surprise me terribly if it doesn't, but I just don't see how.
The Tea Party has a lot more power than their numbers would seem to justify.
But you know, the funny thing is, the Tea Party has important elements within it that are saying we've got to deal with this.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we've talked about that too.
Yep.
You came up in Florida.
Right. Okay, next item is from Clean Technica. And it says, this is from the journal Nature. It's from Clean Technica, but it's talking about the journal Nature. New research published in the journal Nature says 3.3 million people are killed every year as a result of outdoor air pollution. The number of deaths each year is currently set to rise to 6.6 million a year by 2050 by research estimates, if emissions aren't cut, reminding us of the importance of electric vehicles. Well, it's not just electric vehicles, it's other things too that are renewable, and that means we have to ditch coal, we have to ditch gas, we have to ditch the oil everywhere we possibly can. You know, I've mentioned this before. When I was young, I had a friend who was an old man who was a very fine toxicologist, and his estimate was that about 1,000 people were dying in the United States every day as a result of cancer, which they got, according to him, because they were exposed to petrochemicals.
Wow.
Now, everybody in the country is exposed to petrochemicals.
Absolutely.
And you know, they don't even go into this. This is not petrochemicals. This is outdoor air pollution.
Got an interesting map up here on the screen.
Yes.
Of outdoor air pollution.
Yes.
Worldwide.
Yes.
And it's interesting is the eastern half of the United States is the more polluted in the United States.
Well, there's a reason for that. That's also the most populated.
And if you look at the world, China and India are the worst
Yeah.
polluted places in the world.
My,
By quite a bit.
My eyes, I have a mild color blindness. I see the dark areas, the blue areas in Europe, and
Well, they're more intense than the green areas.
right.
But the reddish and the yellowish are in India and China. The only places where it's
And
red and yellow.
the reddish in China is,
Quite red.
it may be quite red to you, but it's not where my eyes go when I look at that map. But nevertheless, what is happening here is it's showing that Europe is fairly badly polluted.
Europe's pretty bad. Much worse than North America.
Yeah.
North America is worse than South America.
Yeah, and the eastern half, where we live, as a matter of fact, in Vermont, we would expect heavier air pollution than if we were in Oregon or Washington or someplace
We got
like
it.
that. We've got it. And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize that, but I keep bringing up the example of the bodies of water in Vermont that are all polluted by mercury. And they have been polluted, and the pollution is an accumulating pollution that's not going to go away. And the only way we can deal with that properly is to say we are not going to have mercury allowed coming out of power plants at all.
Well, yeah, that's a good point.
And what that
And where's
means
the
in
mercury
effect
coming
is
from? It's coming from coal.
it's coming from coal. And what that means is I think that it's a reasonable thing to say that since the mercury is already making our waters bad, and it is an accumulating poison that there is no technology that will get rid of it, we should not permit it to be put into those waters. And all of our coal plants nationwide, and I think we could
It's doable.
ask the Canadians to come
It's
along with
doable.
this one. We
It's
should
gonna
just
take a
shut
few
them
years,
all
but it's
down.
doable.
Well, they're old to begin with.
Yeah.
And the technology is
gonna be
old.
replaced.
And we should not open new coal plants at all. But that's not an argument that's going to require a lot of words to go into it, because we're not opening new coal plants. I think we've had 3 megawatts of coal come on in the country this year. Not a lot.
Not a lot. The interesting takeaway from this, the study found that ammonia released from fertilizer on farms and animal waste reacted with traffic fumes and power plant fumes to create dangerous particulate matter. I never
That's
thought of
not
that
nice.
before.
Well, these
I knew
definitely.
there's particulate matter out of there, but
Yeah.
I didn't think that the ammonia from the fields was combining.
I didn't know that was happening, but it doesn't surprise me.
It's not a good thing.
No, it's not a good thing.
And
those
indoor
particulate-
pollution is perhaps an even greater problem.
Well, indoor pollution, like we saw that
Well, we
picture of
saw
that
that,
fire earlier, people having open fires in there, and interesting. I'm really interested in technology. I love technology, and one of the technologies that I really get a kick out of is the use of fires indoors. And because I'm interested in that, I happen to know that the chimney was invented during the Middle Ages. The ancient Greeks and Romans didn't have chimneys. They didn't know about that.
Yeah.
And they had problems, Okay.
Next one's I got a very interesting picture here.
Okay. This is
an aerodynamic truck
okay.
to save energy.
Okay.
It's an example of energy efficiency.
What it reminds me of is those.
Looks like a guided missile.
It looks to me like those coal burning locomotives they used to call streamliners.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, for the same reason.
Yeah, Clean Technica gave us this. Energy efficiency saved large manufacturers in the United States an estimated $2.4 billion in energy costs over the past 5 years. I bet it's a lot more than that. And could generate over $11 billion in annual energy savings by 2020, according to the U.S. DOE's Better Plants Program, a multi-sector initiative to improve energy efficiency in buildings. And
I keep looking at that truck. If I saw that coming down the road, I think I'd crash my car.
Well, we should say goodbye.
Well,
So why don't you
let's put us up here so we can say
click
goodbye.
your magic clicker?
Yeah.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Right hands up. There you go.
Been fun.
See you later. Yeah, it's been fun. I want to put out
that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.